and we are live. Welcome back to It's Not a Sport, Season 2, Episode 22. This week's going to be a relatively short episode. There wasn't a whole lot of news, but I will be giving my take on Borderlands 3, since I have gotten my hands on the game, as well as some other small things over there. So I said last week that I promised to give you all the teams that qualified for Worlds for each region. Here it is. And we're going to start with that, since right now all leagues are essentially over, and they're all you can go on Twitch right now and watch Doublelift, who is the ADC for Team Liquid, and he's playing boot camp right now in Europe, and then I believe he'll be going to Korea to finish off his boot camp, and then straight to Worlds. And forget where it is this year. I want to say it's in Europe. I think it's in Europe. So, all right, moving into that, for North America LCS, Team Liquid is our first seed, then Cloud9, and then Clutch Gaming. For Europe, LEC, G2 is the first seed, then Fnatic, and then Splice. For LCK, SKTW, or SKT, SKT Telecom 1, is Korea's first seed. Griffin is their second, and Damwon Gaming is their third. For LMS, which is Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Russia, I believe, JT, or J-Team, ooh, it's a weird name, is their first seed, followed by AHQ Esports Club, and then Hong Kong Attitude. For LPL, which is China, Fun Plus is their first seed, then Royals Never Give Up, and then Invictus. For Vietnam, which is VCS, GAM Esports is their first seed, and then Low-Key Esports is their second seed. For Brazil, which is CB LOL, Flamengo Esports will be going. For LCL, which is Russia, Unicorns of Love will be going. For LJL, which is Japan, Detonation Focus Me will be going. For LLA, which is Latin America, Insured Gaming will be going. For OPL, Team Mammoth will be going, which is Ocarina. For LST, which is Southeast Asia, Mega will be going. And for LCL, which is Turkey, Royal Youth will be going. A lot of those low placed teams that aren't really one of the four major regions will have to play in the Gauntlet, which will be kicking off Worlds, which is generally entertaining. For Overwatch League and Stage 4 of Overwatch League, Atlanta is first, followed by San Francisco, then Guangzhou, Washington, Vancouver, Florida, Hangzhou, Los Angeles Gladiators. Then we get to the cutoff point, and then London, Chengdu, Los Angeles Valiants, Philadelphia, Seoul, Paris, New York, Houston, Toronto, Shanghai, Dallas, and Boston. In terms of the total league, Vancouver's first, followed by San Francisco, New York, Hangzhou, Los Angeles Gladiators, Atlanta, London, Seoul Dynasty, Guangzhou, Philadelphia, Shanghai, Chengdu, Los Angeles Valiants, Paris, Dallas, Houston, Toronto, Washington, Boston, and Florida is in last. In terms of game releases for this month, we had, it's really nothing. Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch got remastered for the PS4, PC, and Switch. Zelda Link's Awakening came out for the Switch. That's the remake. And that's pretty much it. Again, we're kind of dying down. We have FIFA coming out about next week. Mario Kart Tour, that's the iOS game that's kind of been catching news, Dragon Quest coming out for the Switch, and then we really kind of kick off a more interesting month with October, starting with Shadowkeep. So nothing really new there. There's also some Final Fantasy news that came out last Saturday in terms of the next patch, in case you're interested in Final Fantasy 14. Again, I advocate for this game. It's a really well-made game, and I think everyone should go and play it. I definitely play it. I feel like I mention it a lot because it's really well done as an MMO. I like to think of it as the modern WoW. So, the news out of that, at least the major stuff, is that the patch will be coming late October. So next month, it'll be getting a new story, new dungeon, new trial, which everyone kind of called it and knew who it was. The new extreme trial is, of course, the final boss the final trial and final boss of Shadowbringers. In case you haven't played that yet, I won't spoil it because it's an amazing fight. But that will be the final boss in case you have. And then we'll also be getting the Nier Automata X Final Fantasy 14 collaboration raid, the 24-man raid. That will also drop as well. On this live letter stream, they actually did a remix song, which I highly recommend if you're a fan of both of those games' soundtracks, which Nier Automata, I think, won Soundtrack of the Year for the year that it came out. I highly recommend you go listen to that soundtrack and the Shadowbringer soundtrack. But if you're interested in both of them, they released a kind of remix between End of the World, which is the theme for Nier Automata, and the Final Fantasy theme. They remixed it for the raid. So if you want to listen to that, just Google Dark Apocalypse raid or Final Fantasy 14 raid music, and you can listen to it because it's really good. The last big major thing they'd be looking at, I think they're going to rework Ninja and Summoner again, and then they're going to, over 5.2 and 5.3, they're going to be reworking how crafting gathering works, just to make it more appealing for newer players to enter it, because it's really actually a lot of fun, and that's how a majority of people make their money in the game. But to get all those materials, to level up all the gatherers through 80, it's a really boring process, and it's really expensive, and it's very time consuming, and there's no real efficient way of doing it other than your dailies and not ventures, Levi's. So they're making it a little bit more easy to get into, cheaper. There's tons of kind of redundant skills, so they're getting rid of a lot of redundant skills and things like that, and that will be over the process of the next patch and the patch after that. So it's really interesting. Moving on, we're gonna talk about Borderlands 3. So I want to dive into the story aspect first, and then I'll get into more design focused things. The story is very bad. It's incredibly bad. Even like the opening cutscene it just kind of monologues you to death. And I feel like you can't do this in these type of games. The game's like opener is all about, of course, like, yes, you're a new character and they kind of have to build you up, and they kind of do. But the game's more like toned. It's to players who never played Borderlands before. I could understand that with 2, because 2 kind of reset it the entire game. It kind of redid everything. But this game is like, 2 was such a massive hit, and almost everyone has, knows of 2 or has played 2, and especially with this game being as safe as it is, not really changing anything about the Borderlands series at all in terms of gameplay. They should have wrote the story in mind that people have already played 2, that people have already know these characters, and with that, they could have focused more on more of alternative things. So let's dive into, and that's just how I feel about the overall story. I also feel like a lot of the side quests are also kind of like that, where the writing's bad and it's kind of redundant on everything you do, where a lot of side quests are like, oh, go here, and then go here, but go here, and then you're kind of like, wait, why didn't you tell me to go here before I did all that before? Like, there's no floater. It's kind of rubber banding until you hit your point, like a game of ping pong is how a lot of these side quests seem to be lit up. But here's the thing, minus the story is not as good as Borderlands 2. It's really fucking corny, and I don't think it will ever be live up to Borderlands 2, especially these antagonists, which I'll get into next. It's still a Borderlands game, and if you take that story aspect out and just go into it for the shooting, the guns, the loot, the abilities, the enemies, it's definitely there. And that's what I really think I'm enjoying about it, is more playing with these new type of guns, really. They increased the drop rate of legendaries drastically compared to 2. I've gotten so many on my first playthrough of a total of like around 8 hours, then compared to my Borderlands 2 playthroughs, like all of them. So they increased it drastically, which is insane. So that just adds more flavor and more fun to the gameplay aspect of things. But back to the story. The gist of it, in case you didn't know, is that there's a new cult called the Calypso Twins. They're their leader, and they run a cult of followers. It's supposed to be a play on streamers and their fan bases, essentially. And they're going around terrorizing people, whatever, trying to open all the vaults across the galaxy. So of course you chase them down, and you're also trying to open all the vaults across the galaxy, and that's pretty much the gist of the story. Over that, there's the Calypso Twins as characters aren't really. It seems like they want to be Jack, but they're not really Jack. In Borderlands 2, Handsome Jack had this thing of like, he'll kind of show off about like how much of an asshole he was, and then he would do it, and it was kind of, that was kind of the punch or the funny of like, how much of an asshole he was. And these guys are more, they're not really assholes, but they're more it's more bickery to me. It's more like wah, instead of like, and it like they follow the same formula, but they don't really have the asshole trait that helped that formula. They don't really have their whole like streamer obey them kind of thing doesn't really fit. And I get what they're trying to go for in today's world, but for me, and maybe if it was like, if I was younger, I was like thinking, that's pretty funny. But as an older adult, with kind of intelligence, it just doesn't fit the profile. Because if you like, it would make, I think it would hit harder if I was one of those like super fanboys who followed like my favorite streamer or whatever the fuck. Then I would feel like it would all their jokes and like their actions would stick with me a little bit more. But most people my age aren't really fanboys of streamers or celebrities like that. I was like, you could say I was that when I was younger, as a kid, as like a 12-year-old, but now as an adult and as a rated M game, it doesn't land. So I think they really dropped the ball with that one. In terms of other characters, you still have your kind of main cast, Lilith, the previous Vault Hunters and all that, and it's good to see them again. But we have a lot of side characters that are just like missed the ball. Spoilers alert in case you haven't played yet, but I generally do spoil things on this show. You meet a character who's a bandit pretty early on in the game. He is actually, and he's really forced onto you, and he doesn't really stick with you. He's just kind of there, and then once you leave Pandora, you're kind of, at least for the after I left Pandora, I haven't heard from him since. But you wouldn't even know who that character really is unless you played the last DLC that came out in like what, April or July, around E3 or June of this year for Borderlands 2. If you didn't play that DLC, you wouldn't know who this character was, and you wouldn't really give a shit about it. And even if you played that DLC like I did, you still don't really give a shit about him. So it's kind of goes for all the characters. I feel like a lot of like the humor that made Borderlands funny is really forced onto you, so a lot of it falls flat as well. And it's probably just the biggest overall problem that I have with the game. It's just like the writing's bad. There's a lot of really annoying characters. From reviews that I was saying that there's now like this preteen character that one of Maya takes under her wing. She's like apprentice, and she's really badly written from what a review that I watched. So it's just small things like that that are very problematic. Now, in terms of gameplay, I'm playing Amaya. I'm playing the Siren. Right now, I think that she is somewhat underwhelming. Her ability compared to like the previous Siren, Maya's phase lock. But I think that maybe late game, that's when really characters start to shine at level like 50, when they're like max level and they have their skill tree maxed out. Because I never really played Borderlands for the abilities. Same with like Destiny, the abilities were cool, but that's not what you play it for. You play it for the guns. And some of those guns are really fucking fun. I like how they gave each gun a sort of identity, but then with that also came a lot of problems. I think that they should have stuck with the identity closer to Borderlands 2. Like Maliway guns have alternative fire modes where you can switch between elements, but those guns generally fired really fast. They had a really high fast rate in Borderlands 2. Now they're kind of like charge up, slow, more like E-Tech guns in Borderlands 2, and that doesn't really sit well with me. Jacob guns mostly stayed the same, so I was never a fan of Jacob guns in Borderlands 2, but they feel really good in this game because they don't, they didn't really mess with them too much. They feel familiar and they feel comfortable. Hyperion guns, they kind of revamped. Hyperion guns were, I think, closer to Maliway also, so it's kind of cool that they changed it. But the design of Hyperion guns, I think, are really funny because it looks like all those guns look like nail guns. They look like they went to Home Depot and were like, okay, let's, take this power tool and design it in the game as a Hyperion gun. But those guns still feel good. I wish there was a better ability than shields